Hey everybody, it's Fox from Inferno Fox Gaming. Welcome to the Inferno Cast episode 036. You, of course, can catch the Inferno Cast here with the Inferno crew here on the YouTube gaming channel of Inferno Fox Gaming, as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. But you have already joined us, so welcome to you, the audience, and especially welcome to my fantastic crew. And tonight, our crew consists of the fantabulous Simbu Darkfang, who is our level 5 grandpa and main actor at Basement of the Dead, and the best player at Fork Knife BRs, Simbu Darkfang. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, always a pleasure to be here. And I know this is a video game podcast, but I want to wish a very special happy 5-0 to the game that probably is a huge inspiration to many video game creators, ye old tabletop Dungeons and Dragons. That hits 50
Nice.
today.
5-0.
Nice.
Yay slash boo.
Oh, happy birthday to one of the greatest inspirations to one of my favorite genres of all time, the role-playing game. Great call out, Simbu. Excellent job. I'm doubling your pay. No, tripling it. I'm tripling your pay. Excellent.
Oh, still 0. Got it.
For now. Next up, we have Jamie Owls, my partner and partner in crime. Jamie Owls, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. We also have joining us here Hillbilly the Hardicus. He's a good friend and a resident Hill Slut. Thank you so much for joining us, Hillbilly.
Hey, thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
And we also have Jason the 13th of the YouTube channel Jason the 13th, whom you can join and catch for a lot of fun Pokemon and Zelda related content. Jason, thanks so much for joining.
Not a problem. Happy to be here. Oop, you're
And
muted.
also we have Astrimedes. He is the developer and co-owner of Second Place Games. Astrimedes, thank you so much for joining.
Glad to be here. Talking
And
about
last
horror
but not
games.
least, we have the wonderful, fantastic Stormrosesky of the Twitch and YouTube channels, Stormrosesky. Storm, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. And as Simbu had mentioned, 50th anniversary for D&D. I also want to point out another important anniversary for today. It's the 30th anniversary of the release of Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo, one of the best video games that have released on the system in the Metroid universe and ever. So happy birthday, Super Metroid. At some point, we will be doing a Metroid podcast. Don't know when, how, and who, but we will be doing that. But before we jump into our main topic, which also sort of has that kind of like isolated feel, before we get into that, we're going to have a pre-discussion topic regarding the PlayStation 5 Pro. And over the past weekend, a lot of the specs and everything have leaked for it, and some of them are alluding to the fact that it'll have like processing power 3 to 4 times more powerful than what the current PlayStation 5 has. So I just kind of want to have a brief discussion about that. It's sort of like, what are your thoughts? Do we need a PlayStation 5 Pro? What could they possibly improve upon this? I'm gonna ask Simbu first his thoughts on this. He is one of our resident PlayStation players, and he actually is a great resource because he had has PlayStation 4 Pro, if I'm remembering right. So he'd be a good resource to sort of kind of uh, provide his own experience and logic to that. Simbu, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, so Inferno Fox, we talked about it quite some time ago, offline. I think that was just a you and me conversation. Um, Honestly, the PS4 Pro was a needed upgrade because of hardware and advancements of affordability for technology. So like as 4K became more affordable, and people were able to afford a 4K television, maybe not a 4K 120 hertz, but a 4K 60 hertz TV. So people wanted that upgrade, especially for 4K movies, and with PlayStation 4 allowing, streaming apps and stuff like that. Hold on. Kiddo's got a friend over. I closed my door back up. But so yeah, like the PS4 needed the Pro upgrade because of the shift in technology at the time. To be honest, I really don't see a need for a PS5 Pro. I really don't. Yeah, it's going to have a faster processing power, and of course, my question for that is going to, is that based off of the original PS5 or the PS5 Slim? Are the specs on the original PS5 and the Slim different? Because that would make a question, would be a valid question, depending on how they're deciding how much faster the PS5 Pro is versus which PS5 version.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely a good point where looking at it historically, there was a lot of need for like that mid-generation refresh, especially with the changing technology and the softening of price regarding 4K TVs. And it's almost been like 8 years since the PS4 Pro, and you've got 4K still being a prevalent, prominent thing. And the next step up, of course, is 8K, and the PS5 literally has 8K on the box, but you don't really have to hear or see games being 8K, and you don't really see a lot of the TVs being sold with 8K. They're out there, and they're still really expensive. So it just makes me wonder, like, how much of a market that there could be on that. Hillbilly. I'm sorry. Simbu, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Just one more quick thought while I have it. Your actual next step for a TV is a 4K 120 hertz, as the 4K 60 hertz are what are the affordable TVs right now. The 120 hertz would be the next step up, which the PS5 already does a refresh rate of 120 hertz and can go 8K. So, it's not really necessary.
Yeah. So, Hillbilly, what are your thoughts about the PS5 Pro?
To be honest with you, I'm not as much of a numbers nerd as Simbu is there with the power and the 4K and everything like that. Being a fan of the PlayStation and not having a PS5 yet, seeing that the Pro comes out will either one, I'd rather have the upgraded, more powerful system. Obviously, that's to me that's just easier. But I'm also kind of looking at the fact that a lot of people are going to be upgrading, and I might be able to snag myself a PS5 regular for super cheap. So other than that, those are really the only things I really care about when it comes to the PS5 Pro coming out.
Yeah, and it's funny how you mentioned like a potential price drop. We have really yet to see that happen with this particular generation, thanks to the evil I word that has been thrown around more often than a presidential candidate saying the word "look" before a sentence. With the sort of like price drops and everything, it does make me wonder if there is going to be anything, or if Sony's going to introduce a PS5 Pro at $600, because that's what I'm hearing large rumors for, and it's really reminiscent for the original release of the PS3 when that came out, and that could do everything, as well as like anything under the sun at that point. It was great resource and everything like that, but you paid for it. Storm out. Let me get your thoughts on this about the potential for a PS5 Pro.
I really don't have an opinion here or there about it, because having just gotten the PlayStation 5 only a year ago, I'm just comfortable where it's at. So, or where I'm at. A newer machine means newer things and games and whatnot, and then eventually the games stop updating for the old systems and will only update for the new system. So that's all disappointing, but you know, I really to have a good discussion about it, I honestly it's neither here nor there because I'm still in the honeymoon phase of having a PlayStation period. So, you know, I'm fine with the 5 and ooh, make it faster, even better, great, but you know, maybe we'll see. Maybe to have another system in the house. That'd be nice if we can at that time, but who knows?
That's cool. And it's funny you mentioned that you're still in the honeymoon phase because it's like PlayStation 5s themselves have sold over 50 million copies since, or 50 million units since its release. But here we've got Storm, you had just gotten one. Hillbilly, you have yet to get one. And obviously these are just anecdotal, but there's still room to expand this existing console base. Again, it just sort of like has the need or is there a need or a necessitation for that? Jason 13th, what are your thoughts?
Well, it brings a curiosity question to my head. Like, are they planning on doing a PlayStation 6 anytime soon to where the Pro would be really useless? Or is this their way of extending their time before the 6 comes out? I see Simbu shaking his head over there. So if they were using it to extend the time to before PS6 comes out, I could see doing an upgrade to try and get more powerful games on it. If it's going to be one of those things that, oh, here's a Pro, and then like a year down the road, here's the 6, who cares about the Pro?
Yeah, because it's
So.
like I've heard Microsoft has a potential mid-generation refresh, but I've also heard their next gen is coming as soon as 2026.
Yeah,
So
so again, why would you put out a Pro to go against the next gens?
the big
Right.
counter argument to that is Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out next year. And having a system that would be able to run a game like that at 4K 60 frames per second, and that's going to be it doesn't matter when that releases in 2025, that will probably be, actually there's no probably, it will be the biggest game seller for that year. And I would guess it would probably get a number of like game of the year awards. We don't even know, like, generally beyond the 2-minute trailer. And with all that said, it's something to where, okay, if you had the system that could be able to play it, and it's something that Sony is going to be able to do well, hey. But then again, look at Sony's support of the PSVR 2, which they had just announced they've discontinued production of. So, Astrimedes, what are your thoughts as we finish up this pre-discussion?
I don't have a PlayStation 5, but I always think the kind of general topic of these sort of mid-generation refreshes of the hardware is kind of interesting. Like, on the one hand, it feels sort of wrong to me anytime they do that because it kind of breaks the contract of what a console is, a thing that always works when you put the game in, as compared to a computer because the hardware is identical across the board. So now when you introduce, and on the side of devs too, it's like, okay, so now you have, two sets of kind of like minimum specs almost. And it's, potentially going to create compromises in the way they make the game where it's like if they're making it for one or the other, it makes sense. But on the other hand, I can see the argument for it. And I think there is like a kind of perfect way to do it or the best possible way, which would be, just doing things like, I mean, I guess to some extent, this kind of is what they're doing. And that's why I'm sort of torn about it. Like adding support for like a higher resolution, even adding like a new connection type that has become a new standard since the console came out or something as like a nice built-in hardware part of the system. All those kind of things feel like sort of valid reasons to do it. But on the other hand, it's almost like maybe you should just make next generation. And another thing I wonder too is these like refreshes, is is this profitable for these companies? I was of the understanding that normally they sell hardware at a loss in terms of the main consoles. Maybe this is less true for more recent generations of consoles, but in the past that was kind of my understanding because they make all their money on selling the games. So like, is it the case though that enough years have passed to where the hardware is cheap enough for them to make to where now maybe they're selling these pros and stuff at a profit? So maybe it does make more sense for them to try to, get a little more money out of it and add support for, newer resolutions and all that. Like the most kind of virtuous reason for a company to do it would be if they were clearly signaling, we are going to have the length of this generation be pretty long. So here you go. Just keep all your game library exactly as it is. We're doing a refresh and we're going to keep this generation going so long that this is essentially kind of like will become the new standard for games devved on this console.
And it
Well,
seems most likely it's going to be like a mix of all of what you said, that sort of, hey, virtuous look for the consumer, as well as we can make some money here. And Simbu, I'm sorry, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
I just want to, Astrimedes, that would be all well and dandy. Like that would be fine under a normal generation cycle. However, we have the event that shall not be named, which took PS5s pretty much off the market for 3 years.
I don't even
According,
remember the event that shall not be named. I don't know if you can say it without violating
It
some
rhymes
sort
with
of.
Schmovid Pintine.
Okay, sorry.
Pantene Pro V,
Understood.
whatever.
Gotcha.
But again, and like Storm, I got my console end of 2022, I believe, Christmas time, around there, when the chip shortage and all the hardware issues were over. So, PS5 released in what, 2019, Inferno Fox, I believe, right?
I think, or 2020, was it Jamie Owls, was it 2020?
So we got ours, PS5.
Yeah, because I remember
Yeah.
I got ours and Jason the 13th.
It was 2020.
Yeah, so it was like September of 2020, I think.
No,
I just
this
Googled
one.
it. November.
Of 2020.
November 12th, 2020. Yep.
Oh, it was a nightmare. You're right, Simbu. It was a nightmare trying to get that. And so you got
Yes.
a PS5 that comes out at the end of 2024. That's the strong rumor. And you got honestly, a lot of us have a hard time being able to quantify time itself, thanks to Schmovid 19. These 4 years don't feel like 4 years. So it's hard without that quantification. It just feels like one long blur, as it were. So
What were you trying to say about like this that event's effect on this generation in particular, Simbu?
Well, just in and of itself, like, okay, so we know that you have scalpers and they're going to come out in force, especially with the Sony system. And they came out in force. Inferno Fox and Jamie Owls know all too well the struggle of getting a PS5 console when it released. And then, of course, that continued throughout because of the event that shall not be named. That continued being a problem. Well, then you also had the factories shutting down. You had parts manufacturers closing doors, so there was chip shortages and things like that. So in effect, yeah, the console came out in little over 3 years ago now, but realistically, for mass ability to purchase it, usually that wears off on a brand new console about a year into its life cycle. This one wore off about 2
you're
years.
100% right. Like the only other one that I remember being this tough was the Wii.
Gotcha. So
Right.
you're saying it effectively like kind of innately extended the generation length of like this generation because of that event. That's what you're saying. So it makes sense to buy now because all these things have changed. Kind of do this re-release.
Now, I'm saying it's more sound, kind of you know, for those of us who like Storm and I, who just barely got ours not long ago, it feels like a slap in the face.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because like that, we just got ours, you know, Christmas time this last year, or, you know, a year or so ago. And then a year later, here comes the Slim. And then now a year later, another year later, here comes the Pro. And from what Inferno Fox and I were talking, I believe at one time, the expectation I think is 2027 for the PS6, somewhere around there. I think that was the number that was being thrown around for a little while.
Yeah, and
Gotcha.
that was real murky at best. And now it's kind of like with the PS5 Pro really leading the way, I could see 2027 or being like the number, or even 2028. Oh, one of the last things that I'm going to rail on before we move on to our main topic is the biggest issue I have with the PS5 Pro is the games. You got Sony making a dedicated effort for like PSVR 2 and now the PS5 Pro. Where are the games? Where's the first party support for that, for these games? And then where is, I mean, there's always going to be the third party support because I mean it's Sony, but the idea that we're going to be having these resources and this type of hardware, but no games to be able to back them up. Sony themselves have confirmed that they will have no first party games until after March 2025. If this comes out by the end of the year, the PS5 Pro, they're essentially launching a mid-gen refresh without any sort of games for it. So that's it. To me, I think that proposition is ridiculous. But I mean that's just me.
Ooh. So does that mean Sony's going to become a Switch when it first came out? It'll be a $600 insert one video game name here, like the Switch was a $300 Zelda system.
Except no game.
Sounds like it'll be a zero game.
Yeah, I know.
but at least it's a nice thing. Hey, you can play your PS5 and PS4 games. Although watch them say, "Oh, sorry, no more PS4 games, but you can play all your PS5."
That I could see happening actually.
Or you can play your PS4 games with a PlayStation Plus subscription.
There you go.
But go ahead, Simbu.
I want to throw one final thing out there. And to be fair, I think some of y'all may agree with me. We haven't really seen the PS5 be really, really tested yet.
The only way I would disagree with you. I'm gonna say one game, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, has tested it, and it is not passing the test. If you put it on graphical mode, it's 4K, but it barely hits 30 frames per second, and it is a problem. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a testament for a PlayStation 5 Pro system, and to me, that also is disappointing. But let's go ahead and move on to our main primary topic. And I didn't call on Jamie Owls for the pre-discussion because this primary one, which is a great idea by Simbu, is sort of in dedication to Jamie Owls just because of how much she loves this series, and that is Resident Evil. And I
thought it was My Little Pony.
Definitely not. But this podcast here is a celebration of the 28th anniversary of the original's release on the PlayStation 1 on March 22nd in Japan. Also North America, I believe, got it like two weeks later, I think on April 1st. The first entry, it's important to know, a little behind the scenes, was produced by Takeru Fujiwara. And as a retro gaming fan myself, I'm aware of his pedigree for being the producer or director for games like Bionic Commando, DuckTales, Mega Man 2 through 7, and Mega Man X, and more. I'm mentioning him because he directed a Japan-only game released in 1988 called Sweet Home. Based on a Japanese movie, this was a horror RPG where permadeath was a main thing. If your character died in a battle, they were dead for good until the end of the game. So if all your characters died, like, it was permanent and game over. and really just the whole aspect that it had with horror, many of the elements from Sweet Home really led and bled into survival horror games. And Fujiwara wanted Resident Evil, the original one, to be a remake of Sweet Home, but because he couldn't get the licensing, because again, it was based off of a horror Japanese game, he opted to create his own world, universe, and what have you. Now, me personally, you're not going to get a lot of feedback from me on this, but I call myself a tertiary Resident Evil fan, a tertiary fan of the Resident Evil series. And I say that because I don't personally play these. I've played the OG one. I've played the remake of 2 and 4, and the original 4, but I personally am happy to see the success that it has brought for Capcom, like that, as well as like the Monster Hunter, given that success to Capcom. And I'm also really happy for the fans, and it's many of these fans whom are here part of the Inferno cast, and I'm going to be relying on. So I'm going to open this up to Jamie Owls and ask Jamie Owls, what entries of Resident Evil have you played?
Well, I played Resident Evil 7. That was the first Resident Evil game I've played in my lifetime. I've always heard the series, but never really got into them when they were originally out for the PlayStation. I believe PlayStation 1 and 2. I played Resident Evil 8, and then Resident Evil 2, the remake, Resident Evil 3, the remake, and then, of course, the fourth one that I believe came out last year or 2022. I can't remember, but I played that. And I'm hearing rumors that they're making a sixth one, if I'm correct, which I think is Code Red or Veronica Red. What was the title? Do you know?
Oh yeah, Resident Evil Code Veronica.
Code Veronica, yeah.
Supposedly, they're
Supposedly.
doing a remake on that, but we'll be touching upon the remakes too.
Yeah, but those are the games I played, and it was 2016 when we were at Best Buy, and then we were by the video games, and I saw the box art of Resident Evil 7, and what caught my eye was it looked like a haunted house, and of course this creepy little girl in front of it, and I like anything that has to do with like haunted houses where you get to explore, and so I'm like, oh, I want to play this, and so. I didn't buy it that day, but I remember just thinking about it more, and I went on Amazon and I purchased it and then started playing in the beginning of 2017, and I really liked it. Of course, like I said, it's the first Resident Evil 7 was the first game I ever played, and so I didn't have any experience of how the original games play was like, so I really enjoyed them.
Cool. Yeah, and I remember you told me you saw one of your friends had played it, or you
Oh
watched them
yeah.
play it too. So
Yeah, the fourth one. She was playing it, and I was just, watching her, and it looked really fun, and I really liked it.
cool. Now I'm going to go on the other end of the spectrum, because it's really cool. You are a relatively newer joiner of the Resident Evil series.
Mhm.
Hillbilly, how about you? How many of the Resident Evil games have you played?
I still have and have played Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica. I believe I still have 0, 5, 6, and remake of 2.
Nice. Yeah, so you got a lot of that the classic Resident Evil experience on your belt.
Yeah, I'm dating myself here, but I've been here since the beginning of the series. I always was disappointed because everyone told me how great 4 was, and I just have not played it. But I might, when I get a PS5, I might end up picking up the remake of 4.
To that end, a good segue. Simbu, how about you? What entries have you played in the Resident Evil series?
So I played the original Resident Evil. And I will just say real quickly that the stop drop shoot made me not a fan originally. So I skipped 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then picked it back up with 7. 7, 8, and then the remakes of 2 and 3.
Nice. Storm, how about you? Any Resident Evil experience?
I do. Well, I've not played myself yet, but I did buy Resident Evil 2 when it was on sale on the Switch. And then a friend of mine gave me his copy of the Switches for the Switch Resident Evil, the first one. So I have a hard copy of that, digital of the Resident Evil 2. I've not yet played it, which I need to. I did watch a friend do a playthrough of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, though, and that was fun. So the more I hear Jamie Owls talk about these games, like this one and Tomb Raider, I need to get off my butt and play them. I'm missing out for sure.
Yeah, you do.
So I don't see, especially with loving the horror and all of that. So I really do need to get on it, and I just haven't played. Unfortunately, haven't played it, and I went to play more recently, and I have to move things around on my Switch because I ran out of space for other games. So that one is on the cloud storage, bro. I'll just have to re-download it. So.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. If you want to have the real creepy experience, I definitely recommend 7 to start, like how Jamie Owls did. It was fun watching her play through it, especially her reactions to the jump scares. Well, that's always fun for me to watch.
Yay.
So just a warning: if your husband's anything like me, and I'm gonna guess that your husband is Storm. Hopefully your husband's not watching this, because otherwise he might get ideas to mess with you if you play a Resident Evil game. But
you know what? He won't even be in the same room.
Okay.
Because he does not do horror anything. In fact, a Christmas present, air quote, Christmas present a couple of years in a row was watching one of my favorite horror movies. So one year I got him to watch Jaws, which Jaws is not horror. I don't care what you say. And
Yeah, no. It's not
Friday,
really a horror movie.
No, it's not.
It
And
actually
Friday
Yeah, it
the
is.
13th.
I'll
So-
stop.
Just because it makes people scared of the ocean does not
Yeah.
mean it's a horror movie.
No,
Yes.
no. So
If
it's
Jaws
more
is
of
a
a
horror
sci-fi
movie, then Die
thriller.
Hard's at Christmas.
Yeah. Oh God, no,
Yes.
we're not going down that road again. We want to keep an audience, not get rid of them. Yeah, he won't be anywhere near it. He'll do little bits and he'll make comments, which is great considering he loves to watch all these medical stuff, and we'll watch medical videos, and like that's real life compared to this fake blood stuff. But whatever.
You
Go
know,
on with yourself.
he's setting himself up the perfect alibi for the perfect jump scare. So I applaud your husband's dedication to the long game. He is. I always tell Jamie Owls this. He's one of the smartest people that I know, and I definitely applaud him for that. But yes, he won't watch you play at all. You're right. He won't. He won't.
No.
No. Jason the 13th, what is your experience with the games that you've played in the Resident Evil series?
Very much, pretty much the same as Hillbilly. I played it hardcore for the first like 4 or 5 games, then kind of fell off. And I remember playing a demo of one of the games where you couldn't run anymore and you literally walked through the whole thing. And I think that really like kind of killed Resident Evil, and I really haven't gotten back to it since. I know I tried a little bit of one of the remakes, and I think it was the remake of Resident Evil 4 on the Xbox. I got to play a little bit of it, but that's about it for the newer ones. Like I said, hardcore at first with the first series, the first few games. So
Nice. And how about you, Astrimedes?
I played when they came out on PlayStation 1. I played Resident Evil 1 and 2 just a bit, like probably a few hours each. I think I didn't own it, but I maybe borrowed it from someone once or something. I really liked them. I really liked the fixed camera thing in the old ones, actually. Even though its like effect on gameplay is weird and sort of bad, I thought it was used really well in terms of like, I remember thinking at the time, like, wow, like this is like a movie the way they did it. It's like very cinematic despite those gross, blocky, grainy old PS1 graphics. But I played Resident Evil 4 on GameCube. I played that all the way through. When it came out originally, I really liked Resident Evil 4. It was the first one I played all the way through, and I think the only now, come to think of it. Played Resident Evil 5 for maybe like an hour. I was excited that it like offered a co-op experience, but didn't like how, I don't know, the setting, the story, the characters, just, those things. The gameplay itself also, I guess really the main thing was I didn't like the gameplay. Like it just felt like a, like war game. It's like, Call of Duty, zombies and fire. But yeah, so I bounced off that one. And then so I downloaded kind of in preparation for the podcast, I downloaded a demo of Resident Evil 8 Village, which made me ask a bunch of questions about what the heck was going on. So I then watched actually hours of Resident Evil 7 video on YouTube just out of curiosity to sort of catch up. And I knew it was, different. I wanted to see, when they really changed over. But yeah, so I don't have real experience with 7, but I watched a lot of it. So I have a pretty good idea of what's there.
Nice. Very
I'd
cool.
like-
Yeah, so we've got a interesting mix of Resident Evil experience, I'd say. Kind of going to I'll lean a little bit heavily more towards Jason and Hillbilly's experience, and maybe Simbu's too. Talking about the first 3 games on the PS1, because Astrimedes, as you said, they kind of played similarly when they're on the PS1. The sort of that cinematic look with the pre-rendered backgrounds and the blocky frickin' figures and polygons and whatnot. So with these 3 games, you control Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy, Claire, and then of course the infamous Jill Jill Valentine. When it jumped into the next generation for the 4th iteration, it led with more action over the horror aspect, and I really feel like this became more the case as the series progressed from the 4th to the boulder punching 5th one to the 6th one. Simbu, I'm going to ask you this because we've discussed it in earlier episodes, kind of what you would alluded to. What were your thoughts when the series moved from the original horror-led efforts of 1 through 3 to that action-led move in the 4th one, like when it originally released?
Well, it kind of felt like they were maybe attempting to pander to a North American audience by going more militaristic and, we're going to play, Call of Duty Zombies before Call of Duty Zombies was really a thing. But it honestly, the little the storyline to it and the enemies were, in the general Resident Evil feel. But I mean, let's be honest. A K-bar is not blocking a chainsaw. I don't care what anybody says. No, it felt like it was trying to do something that it wasn't, and it was testing something. And because Force, seemingly is it was very popular, they're like, oh, well, this is what everybody wants. Well, that's an unfortunate consequence, because look what 5 and 6 became, and 5 and 6 really killed a lot of people's enthusiasm for the series. A lot, to the point where there was a lot of questions: will Resident Evil continue? And of course, I'm not talking about the Wii shooter for the Nintendo Wii, the Umbrella Chronicles, which I will say was a fun one. It was fun, but
And
if you're playing with a friend.
And I'm definitely on board with you regarding the whole Capcom pandering to the Western audience thing. And if the 5th and 6th entries led toward that, Capcom did that with like the Bionic Commando remake. It really tried to be, it's got that edgy story. His wife is his arm, his mech arm, because it has its soul and other sort of stuff. Like that whole generation, like the aughts, when it came to the Japanese companies pandering really towards the Western audience, it was a really confusing and sepia toned time for video games. Thankfully, though, like we had mentioned, Capcom, I feel like course corrected with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, really leaning heavily more into the horror element, and the eighth entry, as Astrimedes had some experience with the demo. That one was more had a lot more action than the Biohazard had, but it still kind of seemed a little bit more horror led. I still heard Jamie Owl's yelp and fright a couple times, though not as much as with Resident Evil 7. So I want to get your guys' thoughts about these two most recent Resident Evil games. Did the especially this was the first time the first person viewpoint was a whole thing with Resident Evil. Simbu, again, let me bounce it off you. Thoughts from moving from third person to first person with RE7 and 8?
Honestly, I get what they were doing with the original Resident Evils with the third person and the whole cinematic feel to it, where it's a fixed camera and, you know, pre-rendered environments and all that stuff. Resident Evil 7 moving to a first person view, becoming not let me be clear, and not becoming a first person shooter is amazing on what they were able to do.
Yeah.
It pulls you into, you know, the head of Ethan Winters. It, you know, it puts everything, you know, full face, you know, because like in the originals, like, yeah, there were pre-rendered environments, fixed camera, but if you know, you could still kind of see stuff coming ahead of you, you know, as to where this one, especially playing with noise canceling fancy headphones that are, you know, surround sound, it definitely really ramps up that creep factor, especially in 7, because you can play with, you know, you can play with people's audio, instead of just, oh, I'm looking at the screen right here and everything's coming from the TV. Now I'm sitting in my chair and here comes Mia, for, you know, I hear Mia laughing from out of the back right corner of my headset. I'm like, you know, swing the camera. What? Oh, nobody's there. What? You know. So the fact that, like I said, 7 didn't become a first person shooter. It's very, very, you know, very good and well done on Capcom's part for that. Because it easily could have become
it. Jamie, I'll bug you for your opinion on this, but first I want to ask Storm. Storm, now I know you had mentioned that you hadn't really played any of the Resident Evil games, but what would be your thoughts with that the idea of immersion and playing a horror game like this in that first person view? And there have been other games like the I think it's Outlast. The Outlast series is like that, where you're first
Yep.
person, but it's not about killing things. It's just about like surviving and whatnot. Resident Evil is like that. I felt like it really had that perfect mix. 7 had that perfect mix of survival and a little bit of the gunplay action. So Storm, I'm sorry. So what are your thoughts about like having that sort of first person viewpoint for this kind of horror led vehicle?
You know, oh, I'm not all that great at first person games to begin with. First person shooters are a little bit wonky, whatever, for me to get used to controls and like bouncing around and whatnot. So that will, I think, that would be me running into walls and stuff more than running into the actual monsters would scare me more. So, but for others, you know, I would be willing to try it, because if you're going to be immersed into the world, like, why not make it where you are acting and seeing everything that that person would going through the situation. So it wouldn't be bad. I think just for people not used to that way playing, take some getting used to, like myself. But I'd be into it just to give it a shot. And, if you want to try to scare me, because why not? And I have, I'm air quoting, but I have a horror novel that I'm working on so, anything that you can try to do to scare me it takes a lot because I don't scare easily. So, but like little jump scares here or there, that will help. But, we'll see.
We
So
need to
I-
send her PSVR 1 to play Resident Evil 7 on the PlayStation.
I can get it. I'll have to look at it. Anyway.
Jamie Owls, so you've had the mix now of doing the first person view of 7 and 8, as well as the third person over the shoulder of 2 through 4 remakes. What were your thoughts about that move to first person and the whole idea of immersion with Resident Evil?
Well, since Resident Evil 7 was the first game of the series I've played, and starting off with the first person view, I think it's cool because when you're playing as first person, you are looking through the eyes of Ethan. So technically you are like playing like the character and seeing through his eyes and what he's experiencing. So it makes the whole like experience that more realistic, even if you're not playing under a VR system. But when I switched to the third person view from starting with Resident Evil 2, getting to select my character, the first time I played it was with Leon. It took some time getting used to because I'm not someone that really plays a lot of first person or first person shooter games. But if I would have to pick a preference, I would personally pick the first person view. That way I just get more of the horror experience where, the little jump scares you got. Whereas the second, third, and fourth game I played was third person, I didn't really get much jump scares because, you're seeing your character move around, and then when you move around a corner, you get like a creature in front of you. It doesn't really get that like moment. So, but I think with Resident Evil, if they're going to move forward with first person view, I really think the audience will be more satisfied with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they can always do a thing where a future patch or an additional third person type view, but like they did with the 8th one. So one of the things that Simbu had mentioned with RE7 and really it's not a first person shooter. It was that sort of first person view, and it like makes the game because of the immersion factor, but it's not like it doesn't define it like a Doom or a Call of Duty or something like
Yeah.
that. Well, one of the something comparable I can think of, because of course I'm the Metroid nut, is when Metroid Prime came out, and they build that as a first person adventure, like that kind of thing. And so in a way, this sort of feels like that, except Resident Evil 7, it was the idea that it was a first person horror game. It wasn't the fact that it defined it, but it certainly helped with the immersion. Before I move on to the next question, Astrimedes, I want to get your general thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'm someone who really does not like first person games normally. But from even, I spent, really not very long with the Resident Evil 8 demo, but I tried, both first person and third person. Honestly, the third person wasn't as janky as I expected it to be, knowing it's something that is probably kind of a bit more added on. But in general, I would say both. It feels almost a little more like the old school tank controls in a way. It feels like a more modern way to do the old school tank controls. I don't know how to quantify it exactly, but it felt like compared to like a normal first person game, it was just kind of somehow more effort to like swing my view around and kind of point in the direction I wanted to go and go. I didn't have any other crazy movement abilities. I wasn't very fast, and all that kind of stuff helps aid in that. And then just the whole, you have to kind of like press another button to raise your gun and then attack whatever, aim and shoot helps with that too. But like so long story short, even though I'm resistant to first person view, I think they actually did it in a good way that made it feel, my impression watching it, like I only played the demo a bit just to get a feel for how it controlled in general with first person. And then I watched hours of Resident Evil 7. It felt like a decent found footage horror movie, basically. And the other thing I'll say too about 7, just by observation, does such a better job of story wise setting up like the stakes for your character, why your character cares. I feel like pretty much all the other Resident Evil games, it's like you're dropped into zombies, fight them. And this was more like, you get the background. Oh, you're trying to find Mia. You don't know what happened. The storytelling does some kind of interesting stuff where we kind of see events in the beginning that are later kind of explained at the end. It was like really thoughtful about the story. And I think they were able to do that by basically divorcing themselves from any of the insane continuity and insane story of the prior 6 games to that. So I think overall, like even though I'm resistant to it, I think it was actually a good move if they kind of maintain the mood and feel of the game. And like Simbu's saying, like the sounds like very immersive, especially when you're already in that first person view. Modern lighting effects, you can do all these neat things with shadows and stuff kind of for free. And yeah, I was very impressed by it. Did not expect to watch hours of video of it, but I did.
Yeah, it was really an impressive title. If I've heard people argue that 7 and 8 are 7 or 8 are the best in the series, or sometimes even like their favorite games of all time. There's a good argument for it because these are really well-made games. It's like almost a catering to the Western audience, but without it being like very tropey. You know what I mean? Like it's enough of a focus on the story without it being hokey and just that sort of level of ridiculous that you kind of had with the failures of the games that released in the aughts. Want to get kind of your guys' thoughts just on the new remakes that Capcom released the last few years again with 2 through 4 remakes. Hopefully we're going to get Code Veronica being released at some point. It's come to think of it, it's odd. We really haven't gotten any Resident Evil news since 4's DLC for Rose. No, not 4, 8. Oh no, again, I'm wrong again because I think the latest DLC was Ada Wong's DLC for 4 that came out, I think, midway through last year, September, October. So maybe it just seems like it's been a long time. I don't know, but it seems like it's been a long time since we had any new something new Resident Evil being announced again. That's not DLC. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts to see if Resident Evil 2 through 4 remakes captured that same feeling you had with playing the OG, if it surpassed expectations. Jamie Ells, I know you mentioned that the 2 through 4 remakes were the first time playing these. And Simbu, am I remembering right that you played the OG 2 and 3 and the remakes? I'm sorry.
I didn't play much of the OG 2 and 3. I think if anything, I may have tried to because I'm pretty sure Jason 13th had it. I probably gave 2 a little bit of try or watched him play some of it. But yeah, I own both 2 and 3 remakes.
And good experiences with them and everything like that too.
Yeah, I can definitely, like you said, having a more positive experience with 7 and 8, that whole first person view. They did do a pretty good job in parts of 2 and 3 to capture that feeling with, especially with having movable cameras and stuff like that. They definitely did have parts of it, like being chased by Mr. X, plain and simple. I don't care what anybody says. Mr. X gave me those Resident Evil 7, 8 first person view vibes. Just because that gray, whatever, bluish sea monkey looking thing just comes out of nowhere. And so you're running around the police station, and the corridors are just boom through a wall. What?
I think I read somewhere that in the original game, the Mr. X was only there for sort of part of the game. And then in the remake, they actually made it like a constant thing where he's always after you. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think you might be right. I think I heard that I think I heard that in Mr. X wasn't a huge constant in the original, but they threw him in there, and I think possibly why they put more of him in it is because of that controllable camera.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like a fun kind of tension building thing too. Like, why not sort of add it to the whole game if it's already a setup that kind of works like that?
And Jamie Owls, you enjoyed Mr. X quite a bit, right?
No, and I suffer from anxiety. He just increased it. He actually showed up in my dreams too. When I finished playing Resident Evil 2, I went to bed and I had a dream about him and he was chasing me and it wouldn't stop, so
Oh, maybe their playtesting of the original game revealed it could do that to people, so that's why they didn't do what they did in the remake.
Jason the 13th, what are your, so I know you mentioned, I think you played the second or the fourth one on your Xbox One?
Yep, I think it's the Resident Evil 4. I'd have to go look. But the other, like, four, the only other remakes I played was when it went to the GameCube. But I actually was enjoying the little bit that I've played on the remake for the Resident Evil. I believe it's 4. You're in a prison. Jamie Owls might know. You're in the prison cell for most of the beginning of the game, at least.
yeah, you kind
Is
of
that 4?
So yeah.
That is 4, though.
I didn't think.
No, that's 2.
That is
two,
2.
two, you're in the police station.
Yeah, you're in the police station and you go in the cells. 4, you're more in the village.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Okay,
thought
so
4
maybe
kind
it
of
is
just started
2.
you in the village.
Maybe it is
yeah.
2 then that I played. Resident Evil 2, the remake on the Xbox.
Yeah, because I'm actually looking and I don't see.
Because I remember like cell blocks, and you're walking
Yeah, that's-
around the cell blocks for a chunk of the beginning of the game.
Yeah, that's
I
got to
know
be two then.
I know
Okay.
in 4, there is a part in the game where you fall into like this room with chains.
Nope.
Okay.
It's 2 then that I played. But I was actually really enjoying it.
It's another game that you need to play and finish out there.
Yeah, go back to it. Yep.
And Hillbilly, any interest in doing Resident Evil 2 and 3? It's funny, 4 did release on the PS4, the remake. Are you thinking about trying them?
I've played the remake of 2 already. I played as the was it Jill or Claire? I can't remember the main. I played as her story. I never played as Leon's story in the remake, but the remake I thought was pretty solid. It's been like 20 years since I played the original Resident Evil 2, so
Yeah.
I remembered parts of it, obviously, which you're going, but the original for me had, I want to say, 1 or 2 jump scares that like Stormrose. I don't really scare easily. So like I think when the dogs jump through the window at one
Yes.
section, that's that's probably
That
the
is one of the
first.
best introductions to one of their
Yeah.
enemies.
So like that scene got me. And I don't remember having any jump scares in Resident Evil 2 remake that ever got me. But overall, the storyline I thought was a little more fleshed out. Graphics were beautiful, but it was it was really good. I'm interested in playing 3, and I've always wanted to play 4, so I'm probably going to end up picking up 4 eventually too.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, so as we round out our Resident Evil discussion, let's talk about the most important medium that Resident Evil has appeared on. No, it is not on mobile phones, which Resident Evil 4 Remake did just release for the iPhone iOS store
No,
in December.
why?
Exactly. That is the appropriate reaction. The most important media of all, if you're Jeff Keighley, and that is the movie industry, movie, film, and TV. I just want to see if you guys have watched, or if you like any of the Mila Jovovich led live action Resident Evil movies, or any of the animated or fully CGI ones like Resident Evil Death Island that just came out. Hillbilly, any of the movies for Resident Evil that you've watched, liked, disliked?
I'm pretty sure I've seen all of them except for the last one. I like Mila Jovovich. I can watch her in just about anything. The movies are a campy, stupid fun
And it's
time.
a good thing because
I mean, the movies they're like I said, they're campy, they're stupid, they're fun. Are they good movies? Not really, but I'm a huge fan of terrible movies. This cinematic, the CGI ones, I think I've watched them all. Can I tell you what happened in any of them? No, because I don't remember them. They did not hold my interest. They were boring. So it was just the CGI was just I
Pretty
do have
sure
a
it didn't
question
have
for you
Mila
on other
Jovovich.
media though. Have any of you read any of the books?
Yes.
Oh.
No.
Simbu, books
I think
and the
I own them.
movies. What are your thoughts on the books and the movies?
I think I still have all the books. I think I might be missing the last couple. I'd have to look at my book box and see which ones are there. Books were really good. I really enjoyed Stephanie. I can't think of her name. It was Stephanie Daniel Perry, I think.
I was
that
gonna say
wrote
it's not Stephanie
S-
Meyer. It's not about
SD
shiny
Perry
vampires.
is what
SD
she
Perry.
went by.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Hillbilly. I absolutely loved her novelizations of the book or of the games. It was just a fantastic job on those. Movies. Oh, we got to go with the Netflix like live action Resident Evil. That's the best one of them all. No, I'm kidding. All right, I'm kidding. That was trash. The worst thing Resident Evil could have done since 5 and 6.
I did hear that was terrible.
Oh my god, it's horrendous. If you have Netflix and you're interested, by all means, if you're interested in wasting brain cells, go for it. I've seen all the Resident Evil live actions with Mila Jovovich. Honestly, the first one was the best with Michelle Rodriguez and everything. I like that one the most because we got to see the mansion a little bit. We got to see inside the hive, and I don't know. After that, Apocalypse and everything like that, and they just became a bit too actiony. Again, more pandering to Western culture versus again trying to capture what Resident Evil really is. And yes, they are campy and they're, but again, that first one, tight spaces, tight quarters, you're in this underground, like you're trapped underground with all this. It had that Resident Evil vibe to it.
isn't it ironic that the good
Don't you think?
instances, the good instances of the games are games that are basically kind of good horror movies, and the Resident Evil movies are just terrible movies?
Well, it didn't help that the movies went completely away from all the video games.
Yeah, and in a way, the movies get kind of video gamey in their ridiculousness. Like, how many of these guys is she fighting? And they're just all here now, and these like weird white backgrounds. I feel like I always see in all of the media clips from these things.
But unless I'm wrong, at least with the second Resident Evil live action movie, they went completely away from the game storyline storylines and just did a whole
yeah.
world of their own.
And that way they're
Oh,
not
with,
like it's Resident Evil almost in name only.
Right.
yeah, with Nemesis just let loose and hunting all these, hundreds of stars members that never ever really mentioned.
I heard someone else that had seen almost all the movies comment that they're pretty sure that the beginning of every sequel retcons the entire ending of the prior movie because it always ends in an apocalypse.
Gosh.
Can't really argue that.
Right?
Jamie Owls, after hearing all this, do you have any interest in watching any of these Resident Evil movies?
I think I did a long, long time ago, but maybe, maybe.
First one's the only one really worth watching.
Yep. Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes.
Seems like possibly as a campy, terrible movie watch, maybe if you're interested in that, would be like the main reason to ever even think about checking any of these out.
Well, we know Astrimedes got PTSD when the grid pops up on the screen.
Hmm.
Oh, so that is Resident Evil. And with me and my very, very low experience, just a huge shout out to our fantastic crew here. Being able to go through some excellent horror video games, suffer through some horrible movies. It's really a fantastic series in its own right, and you can obviously play Resident Evil's 0 through 8 on the PS5 right now, literally, because 0 and 1, the GameCube HD remasters are available on the PlayStation Network. 2, 3, and 4 remake. 5 and 6 are ports of, I think, the PS4 or PS3 version. They're awful, but they're awful because they're good because they're awful, or they're awful because they're good. I don't recommend you try them. I recommend that you start with like 2 or 7 remake because those are so good. But yeah, awesome series. Just again, a huge shout out to our crew here. And they, of course, Simbu, Jamie Owls, Hillslot, Jason the 13th, Astrimedes, and Stormrosesky, but especially you are our audience. Make sure you let us know in the comments section below if you have been watching this on YouTube, what your favorite Resident Evil games are. And make sure that you catch us next week on our show, which will be celebrating in celebration of a very old and very famous long-running TV series getting its own video game. But thank you so much for joining us, and have a great night.